used to not keep doing it to them, so they wouldn't give him bail because he's broken bail conditions in the past. So his court case is not till November, but lots of people have been asking me. He's got another bail hearing on the 24th of January at the Downing Centre in Sydney, and there's a vigil at Hyde Park from 9 a.m. that morning. It's on the corner of Hyde Park, that Downing Centre courtrooms. So, I don't know any of you know anything about that. There, you can donate to his cause. There's Sista, what's it called? GoFundMe.
It's a GoFundMe one.
GoFundMe account, Dr Andrew Catalara.
It's on Facebook quite well.
Yeah, well, you can donate here and we'll send it to him. But I really want to pay respects to him for, you know, he's not here today, he's in jail. His wife told me this morning he's having a good time in jail. They're all calling him Doc. And he'll come out of jail and he'll want to change all the conditions in jail. He's one of those guys, you know. So it's really interesting. So we've nutted out a bit of a program. Dr Deb Waldren here is going to talk to you first. She's been here before. She's great and she'll tell you her story. Then Dr Teresa's here. Here she is. Wave your arm, Dr Teresa Taupig. And she's written a book and outspoken on cannabis for use as a medicine. And I'm really impressed at how bold and game you've been, Doc. Good on you. And then I've got a local lawyer who's written books on cannabis law reform who's coming to talk, who'd be great for you to talk to, Steve Bolt. And we'll have a break. And then this afternoon, after lunch, I've got a lot of medicine makers talking and demonstrating, and several of them have been in America, and you know, all that left-hand east coast of America has had legal medical cannabis for more than 20 years. People don't realise that. California, legal medical cannabis in 1996. And it's just been a win-win for everybody. So those guys have been able to do research and learn about it and breed certain plants and learn how to extract the medicine, the essence that we all want to know about. They've had years over there doing it legally. We're hiding in the bush in an old tin shed. So it'll be good to hear from them. But first up, Deb. So grateful for you to come again. Deb's from Queensland, out west. And she's a warrior. I would have to say you are a warrior, woman.
Warrior?
Yeah, not a warrior, a warrior.
A warrior, well, the fact that I'm still here.
Yeah.
Now, well, I'm waiting on some scan results, but technically, so far, I'm still in remission from stage 4D melanoma. So that's part of my journey. And Michael, I say, you know, Michael, what do you want me to talk about today? You know, he says, oh, just talk about your journey. And I thought, well, you know, really, I've been on lots of journeys in the last 5 or 6 years. And so I decided that this talk isn't going to really be all that much about cannabis. Cannabis comes into it. But this is the story of one of my journeys, and this is my journey as a doctor. I grew up at Redcliffe, near Brisbane. Went to a Catholic school. I had a really good Catholic education, which was a bit surprising back in those days. Then I had 2 kids, and then finally started medicine when I was 30, when my boys were in primary school. So I graduated in '96 and worked Redcliffe Hospital for a few years and then headed out bush. And basically landed in Goondiwindi in 2003, sat my fellowship at the end of that year, and stayed there ever since. That was up until 5 or 6 years ago, when I broke away from the medical centre with which I was working because I didn't like the direction that their medicine was taking, and I didn't like their business ethics. And I opened my own practice, and that really started, a long and terrible journey. I had one brilliant thing that happened to me during this time that I had my own surgery, is that I married my husband Paul. But a short time after that, my world fell apart when the principal of the other practice in town decided that she didn't want me in Goondiwindi anymore, and basically used AHPRA and the medical board to destroy my business and career. So I've only recently had my decision handed down from AHPRA, from QCAT actually, so this is almost 6 years later. And for my supposed sins from the malicious notifiers, my registration was cancelled for 1 week. So I'm now back being just a non-registered doctor, and I'll finish my degree in Western herbal medicine, thank you very much. and think about going back to being an ordinary GP a few years maybe when they've softened their stance a little bit on certain matters. So that's how sort of I came to be in a position where I didn't have a great deal else to do except research cannabis medicine, and I learned how to grow herbs in my garden. That was sort of my way of getting out into the fresh air when I was so sick, and of course, you know, there's nothing more healing than working with plants anyway. So that's sort of the timeline, and that's what happened to me about 5-6 years ago. And then, of course, after that, then I developed the melanoma and blah, 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 and so it's been a very long journey since then. But there was the one fact that I learned fairly early on in my researching. I mean, I'd sort of heard of the endocannabinoid system. I hadn't not ever heard of it. But really, it didn't have any meaning to me. We'd never been taught about it. I mean, we'd been taught about all the other neurotransmitter systems. I mean, we've all heard of the serotonin, endorphins, dopamine, all of those. But nothing about the endocannabinoid system.
Please come and stand in the light with me.
Oh, sorry. I'm not used to being filmed.
Better for the camera.
Yes, it is better for the camera. And then I realised that, in actual fact, back in the 80s, the discovery of the endocannabinoid system was the medical discovery of the decade. Like, this was really important in the medical world. A whole new neurotransmitter system. And we were not taught. And doctors are not taught about it in medical school. No one knew anything about it. So, and this led me then to considering about the way doctors are taught. And then when I started my degree in herbal medicine, I learned a little bit more. And I learned about a thing called the Flexnel Report, which happened in America in 1910. So we're looking at more than a century ago, where they decided that medical education needed to be a little more regulated and standardised because there were a lot of charlatans and snake oil people and everything. And, but unfortunately, the investigator was funded by DuPont and a subsidiary of that owned by Rockefeller. So because of this funding, it linked Big Pharma to medical education more than a century ago, and that those colleges that followed what the chemical companies wanted them to do and used drug treatments first were the ones that got the funding. So this is what actually sounded the death knell for natural medicine in our world, and it happened over a century ago. And you know, I probably don't have as many scales to fall from my eyes as a lot of doctors. I think I tried to practice holistically, and I certainly never discourage people from using natural medicine. But we were taught that, you know, everything decent has already been extracted from plants, and, you know, these single molecules, you know, do a much better job, and we can direct them, and we can, you know, make sure that you just get the exact amount and things like that. And really there's nothing much left in the plant world that's really very useful. And I mean, I now know that's a lie. You know, there's no other word you can really use to describe it. It's a lie. And so doctors have been lied to by the very people who educate them for over a century. And I'd just like all of you to remember that. There's a lot of bagging of doctors that goes on. And you know that so many of them they don't want to go through the paperwork and they don't want to do this. But please just be aware of how we were taught. And we were brainwashed. And so this is a process that every doctor has to go through to sort of come through the other side, and it's not easy. You know, it's really not easy to get over that sort of education. So that's talking about the lie of natural medicine, the lie of medical education, and why natural medicine ended up being sent to the wilderness. Well, come the 1970s, of course, we know that natural medicine's made a pretty good comeback. And judging by the sales of, you know, natural therapies throughout the world, it's very, very popular. You've got I can never pronounce this word, Ayurvedic in India, you've got Chinese herbal medicine, Native American herbal medicine, South American herbal medicine, and so it goes. And part of the joy of learning about herbal medicine is learning the history of all of this. In actual fact, it's very, very interesting. Okay, so we're up to the use of cannabis. Now, to understand cannabis as a medicine, in actual fact, you have to think totally differently. Don't forget, we were actually taught that the one-size-fits-all method, that, you know, we just give this pill for that and that person will be all right. With antibiotics, for example, most of the time it doesn't really matter. But as we all know, it's a very different kettle of fish when it comes to chronic disease. So really, I suppose, the point of this talk today is to highlight that what we need, it's not just accepting cannabis as a medicine. It is actually changing the entire paradigm of the health model in our country and in the world. We cannot succeed with cannabis medicine unless we change the way we view our health. And I suppose that is, I'm hoping that cannabis will be the catalyst for causing that change. I mean, I'm a bit like Michael, you know, we started smoking cannabis at a fairly young age, and certainly by the time I was into my 20s, I was quite aware that it wasn't exactly a social thing, it was more like a medical thing. And then, of course, becoming a doctor, it had to be extremely underground. And in actual fact, yes, there's never been any question of my use of drugs seeing patients. As a matter of fact, in the whole business with the medical board, none of it was about patients, it was just about my own health. Anyway, so now we'll get on to a little bit about how herbal medicine works, including cannabis. And this was in the early days, and I read about this thing called the entourage effect. And all of you have heard of that? Okay, so the entourage effect is a term that has been applied mainly to cannabis, where basically the sum of all the parts are greater than the total would otherwise be. So that it's not just the THC, it's not just the CBD, you've got an entire cannabinoid profile, plus the other constituents of the plant, like terpenes and flavonoids and other things. To date, there's over 140 odd different cannabinoids that have been isolated. And that's just the cannabinoids. It is an incredibly complicated plant. So when they talk about the entourage effect, they're talking about that you need all of these things to work together in order to get the most beneficial effect. And of course, for all of us that have been using oils and have been, you know, people have been treated with oils and treated with other forms of cannabis, it has become clear, anecdotally and now via many studies, that whole plant cannabis therapy far outperforms any isolated extract and certainly outperforms any synthetic. And of course, the other thing that disappears are the adverse effects. As soon as you isolate a molecule from a plant, you create a situation where you have adverse effects because the plant also contains the things that ameliorate those adverse effects. So I thought, oh my God, I've discovered something really amazing, this entourage effect. And then, of course, I started my herbalist course and realised that, in actual fact, the underpinning of all herbal medicine is plant synergy, which is, of course, the entourage effect. So this is the way all herbal medicine works. And this is why it is better for our bodies to take willow bark instead of aspirin. Why it's better for our bodies to have poppy straw tea rather than a hit of OxyContin. Because along with the constituents that cause the pharmaceutic effect that we want, we have other constituents in there that protect us from the adverse effects. So this is when, you know, the dimension of the lie sort of kept hitting me, is that, my God, these herbs are really potent. There's herbs for diabetes. There's herbs for cholesterol. I mean, they filter down into the pharmacies. You know, we all know plant sterols are really, you know, they're saying have your plant sterol margarine. So let's not just eat the plant. Let's make a margarine with all the chemicals and throw some synthetic plant sterols into it and lower your cholesterol, when you can just go out and eat the plant. You know? We're taking something that's incredibly simple and turning it into something that's incredibly complicated. So these were sort of the revelations, I suppose, that's been happening to me over the last couple of years. And I'm excited. You know, I've always been interested in pharmacology and the way that drugs affect you. And to come across herbal medicine, I'm thinking, oh my God, like, you know, with the pharmacology, it's like one molecule. You know, with a plant, I mean, there's hundreds of active constituents that all interact with each other. No wonder the pharmaceutical companies can't figure out a way to test it or to, you know, I mean, the mind boggles at even trying. So that brings us to the next area that we're talking about, is the medical cannabis guidelines came out recently, written by all of the most prominent anti-cannabis prohibitionists that we have in the medical profession in Australia. And it was very illuminating to find out that basically there's no evidence for cannabis for this condition, limited evidence for cannabis, no evidence, limited evidence. And their conclusions are, well, you can give it to your patients if you like, but it's not going to do anything for them. So this is what our medical profession is now being told about cannabis. The lies continue. And it is only by education and educating doctors as well that, oh, I'm sorry, I keep walking out of the light, don't I? Sorry. I think it's because it's shining in my eyes and it gets really uncomfortable. No. Yeah, so is everyone following me? You're not getting really bored or anything? This is fine? Okay, good. That's fine, I'll continue then. Yeah, so, now I've forgotten what I was saying. Oh my God. I mean, you've got to realise this is actually a medical cannabis workshop. So occasionally these things can happen. Okay, so we're up to, the lies, okay. So, we get to, at last, the world is waking up to what cannabis can do. Now, and I am pointing out to you all that, you know, cannabis is only one herb out of a whole world of different herbs, but I must admit it is a really unique plant. And it really is a very special plant amongst plants. I don't think there's another plant on earth that has the number of uses that the cannabis plant has. You know, it really services us from birth to death. It provides us with food. It provides us with building materials, so it provides us with shelter. It provides us with medicine. It provides us with a way of communing with our spirit. I mean, really, it sort of contains everything. And I mean, if you're looking at things holistically, well, cannabis has got it all. And so, being such an important herb in amongst a world of wonderful herbs, it's interesting that in our history it's now become the catalyst for change. And I think the most important thing I'd like you all to realise, you know, from this talk today is that cannabis is really just the catalyst. It's just the most important one. Where really what we have to change is the way we look at our health. So, the answer... Oh, actually, just before I go on to the solution, just one more thing about the problem is that herbal medicine is regulated by the TGA, the Therapeutic Goods Administration. And that happened in the 1980s, and basically all the herbalists managed to claw back was a thing called extemporaneous prescribing, where they can make up a herbal mixture for you in their rooms and give it to you, whether you don't have to have a prescription or anything like that. Other than that, they pretty much lost. So herbal medicine came under the auspices of a pharmaceutic model. In some ways, this is good because it does give us quality control and a standardised product, which is useful. It's not the be-all and end-all, but it does help. You know, I mean, if you're basing your herbal medicine on the active ingredient that causes the response you want, then you'd like to know how much of that active ingredient is in there so you can make a decision. To me, the simplest way of fixing that problem is to make mass spectrometry available to everybody so that anyone who makes any sort of medicine can have it tested. Wouldn't that be easy? You know, have free government testing, and whatever herbal medicine, you can go and get it tested. You know, like, I mean, I can't see that that's going to cost so much money. So anyway, we've now got this crazy situation. I'll use foxglove as the example. It's not even a psychoactive medicine. Foxglove contains digitalis, which is a heart medicine. Digoxin is the molecule that was extracted from digitalis that people take when they have arrhythmias or heart failure. And it's been supplanted by a lot of other modern medicines now, but still quite widely used. So foxglove, it's quite a pretty flower, and quite legal for you to grow it in your garden. But it's actually a restricted herb. It's S4. Now this means that a doctor can prescribe you foxglove extract, but a herbalist who's actually studied it for 3 or 4 years is unable to. So you've got this situation where a doctor who knows nothing about a herbal extract can prescribe it, but the person who knows all about it can't. It's crazy. I mean, I could just go on. I have just been staggered by the ridiculous and inconsistent rules that come out of the TGA. And the bottom line is that you cannot regulate whole plant medicine the way you regulate a drug. And this is what they need to realise, is that yes, you want, we all want quality control. We all want our medicines to be safe. And I think that's fair enough. So yes, I'm happy to have some regulation. But more to the point, it would be easier just to allow people to test their own, or you know, companies, but just to allow testing for everybody. So then you don't have to worry. So Richard Di Natale, the Greens guy, tried a couple of years ago and got it passed through the Senate to have a regulatory board just for cannabis, and knocked back by the House of Reps. This is starting to sound a very familiar story with cannabis legislation. The Senate had their heads screwed on the right way, but unfortunately those in the lower house have far too many ties to Big Pharma to be useful to us at all. So, and I agree with Richard Di Natale in what he says, that it needs to be a separate board. But I'll go one step further and say that all herbal medicine needs to be taken away from the TGA. All herbal medicine requires its own regulatory body, not just in amongst the TGA. And these are the sorts of things we need to start fighting for. So, the answer, well, the whole answer to our world and what's happening in our world is actually blindingly simple. It's just almost impossible to achieve. We just need to go back to eating whole food with clean air, clean soil and clean water. That's all we need to turn the health of our planet around. Using food as medicine and herbs as medicine, we can cut out, I would say, 3/4 of the use of pharmaceutical medications. So I suppose you can understand why Big Pharma really doesn't want cannabis around, because cannabis is the catalyst. And once cannabis is passed, then I think the rest of herbal medicine will just follow. Okay, so the other answer is individualised medicine. And I'm not just talking about holistic medicine. I've always tried to practice holistically. Is everyone hearing me okay? Because I notice my voice is going up and down, and I'm not very good with the mic. I'm probably better off just yelling. But yes, so, and I've always tried to practice holistically with the mind, body, spirit thing. Yep. No, thank you, but no, I'm right. I'll tell you if I flag up. It's not just a question of holistic medicine, and this is the thing that has been driven home to me. It's a question of individual medicine. That is, there is no one size fits all. I mean, how many of you in this room have not followed the statistics of what's supposed to happen when you take a drug? Oh, you couldn't have had that side effect. It's not written down there. Yes, it's, including myself. You know, so we don't all fit into a box. And especially with cannabis medicine, which is designed for the individual. It is the safest medicine we have. And don't forget, all this hoo-ha is over a plant that can't kill you. You know, and this is, just another little addition on ridiculous laws. The fact that we can get aspirin, paracetamol and ibuprofen at a supermarket and these cause deaths every year. Every year. And there's virtually no regulation. Yet a plant that can't kill you at all, and look at what we've caused. I mean, it has just astounded me, the viciousness with which the government and Big Doc has fought back. And really, that's what we're up against. It's a triad, and the government really doesn't figure anywhere, except they're just the puppets. You know, we're fighting Big Doc, and we're fighting Big Pharma, and we're fighting Big Corp, because that's who run our world. And so we have to take back the power. And the one thing that none of us have in Australia is the right to choose our own medicine. Like, do you realise that cannabis is a last resort? You are forced to take drugs that can kill you before you're allowed to have the medicine that can't. I don't know about you, but that blows my mind. It really does. To think that our government thinks that we're going to swallow that. And so, I think that's the other part, I think, of what I'm trying to get through today, is that this is really the war. The war is winning back the right to treat ourselves the way we want to treat ourselves. We're responsible adults and responsible parents. And I think, we should just be allowed to do with our bodies what we want. And that includes our children. Are you all aware in here that the government is taking children away from their parents if they're taking medical cannabis? I mean, the story about the boy who cannot be named has spread fairly well. He's just the worst case. I mean, I was sickened by how many children have been taken from their parents. Another lady I know was forced to go on the Epidiolex trial of synthetic CBD because if she didn't, Lady Salento would inform docs and she would have her child removed. Is this the way we should really be treating the people of this country? You know, like, this is why we need so many more people fighting for this. Because we're not fighting for cannabis, really. We're fighting for the right to choose our medicine. And that's what I want you to take away from this today, is that cannabis is just the catalyst for change. If we can change this, then we can maybe take back the world, which would be really nice. Okay, I've just got to turn the page over and see what I haven't covered yet. I think I'm nearly near the end, though. You must be. I can talk for hours, as a few of you already know. Okay, let's see. What have we got? So the future. In an ideal world, we would have a separate model for herbal medicine, and the TGA can just stick with their pharmaceutical model. What else would we like in this ideal world? A paradigm shift in the focus of healthcare to wellness rather than preventative medicine. So it's a very subtle difference, but preventative medicine has actually been hijacked by Big Pharma. How many people are on statins, the cholesterol drugs that absolutely have no need to be whatsoever? That's just one example. So I prefer to call it wellness, is that herbal medicine leads you to wellness rather than just prevention of illness. This paradigm shift would include that. It would include individualised treatment. It would decide that the doctor is no longer the patriarchal and power-driven person in the therapeutic relationship. I think that a doctor's knowledge and their knowledge and all the things that go along with that does make the relationship slightly less than equal. But that's what you want. You want someone who will guide you, someone that will empathise with you, someone that can just listen. To me, that's what a doctor is for. And I've never been the patriarchal type of doctor. I've actually got a couple of my former patients in the audience and they can testify to that. I think I've always been known as the doctor that swears most in Gundawindi, for starters. So what we're wanting is a cooperative relationship where the patient comes back and says, look, doc, you know, like I know you mean well, but really that indica strain's just setting me on my ass every single night. We're going to have to do something. And we can turn and say, okay, well, let's tweak that. You know, but it's patient-guided. Like the doctor is there for the first lot of guidance because you need a starting point. But cannabis is so safe, and actually most herbal medicine is so safe to work with, that you can. And the other thing we need to do is to get away from the idea of the quick fix, the magic bullet. That's been the big thing with Big Pharma. And I must admit, you know, if I've got an infection that's not really responding to anything herbal, I'm still going to chip along and get some antibiotics. And there will always be a place for emergency medicine and the amazing miracles that we can work just keeping people alive. And there'll always be a place for surgery. There's no herbal medicine in the world that's going to fix an appendix that's about to rupture. You know, so please don't think that I'm saying that all modern medicine is bad. I just think that we need to get away from this idea of the quick fix, that herbal medicine is designed to work slowly because of the plant synergy and so that you don't get the adverse effects. That's the whole point. So we need to be a little more patient in returning to health. I'll say, well, this isn't working after a couple of days. Some herbs have to be taken for 3 months before you get any benefit. So it's having to change that, that sort of, God, whatever the word is.
Fast food.
Thank you, concept, yes. That one there. Okay, what else have we got? And of course, also to have that access to health care is based on need, not affordability. And that, of course, is the big thing that, you know, I mean, if you're rich, you live. If you're poor, you die. And it's as simple as that. I mean, take the example of Trump versus a street kid, both with appendicitis in America. Well, the street kid wouldn't even get into the hospital. They would be dead on the street. And Trump, you know, we'd save his life for what? Ooh. Okay, anyway, I hope there's no Trump fans in the audience. Anyway, and then, of course, the main thing is that we start with natural medicine first. We've got a whole world of drugs out there. We can try them. I'm not saying don't take pharmaceutical products, but start with the things that don't damage you first. You know, I mean, if it's not working or if it's a more urgent situation, that will become obvious very quickly. So there is never anything wrong with using natural medicine first and then go on to all the other things if you have to. And there's certainly some things we can't replace yet. Certainly I think steroids being the big example. You know, unfortunately, we don't really, until we can turn the world around so the autoimmune disorders drop markedly again, and we won't need them as much then, and all the allergies will drop, and all those things that we're using steroids for are created by being poisoned for 3 generations. So, you know, maybe the need for steroids would drop as well, you know, once we're not getting all those conditions. Okay, do you know, I think I've just about got to the end. I have, yeah. So, I'll do a little wind up. Yeah. Oh, you can clap anyway, but you know, I'll do a little wind up first. Yeah, so my journey as a doctor has led me here. As a student of herbal medicine, I think I would be best as an integrative GP because I would like the power that goes along with the GP for investigation and referral and stuff like that. And the other main point is that it's not cannabis that's the fight. Cannabis is just a catalyst, and cannabis is also probably, you know, all of our favourite, really. So that's the thing to remember, is that, you know, you need to leave here fixed in your minds that you're going to take back your power and you're going to take back the right to choose your medicine. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening. I don't think we'll have time for questions because I think I've rolled down for ages. Oh, we can have I can have one quick question apparently. Anything? Well, you can anything about cannabis. I mean, you can ask me about that too. Like, it doesn't have to be, but yes.
Does your body get immune to, you know how like sometimes your body gets used to a certain thing and then it stops working, pain and that? Does that happen with you?
Cannabis is unique in that respect as well. Yes, you can actually develop a tolerance to cannabis, but unlike, for example, an opioid dependence, which causes changes in your receptors that take a long time to fix, it doesn't work quite the same way with cannabis. I'm not sure why, the answer is probably out there, but it's really easily fixed, is that you simply have to abstain or to markedly reduce your dose for a few days and it resets the receptors. I've been smoking since I was 16. It still takes me the same amount to get an effect as what it did when I was 16. Now, if I had the same lot, whether smoking, vaping, doesn't matter, oil or whatever, if I have that same particular strain, brand, mix, whatever, then over time, the tolerance will creep up. But we're still not talking about like massively or anything. And so basically by the time you've gone without for a couple of days and gone and got some more and it's a different type, your receptors are reset, and oftentimes you'll have a really big smoke and then get absolutely off your tip because your receptors have reset. And so in that respect, it's absolutely marvellous because you don't get the same sort of tolerance build that you'll get with opioids or indeed benzos and the other things like that. Does that answer the question? Yes.
But with the medicinal marijuana, would you say that wouldn't have that effect without the THC?
Okay, so first of all I just need to correct one thing. We no longer call it marijuana. That's a prohibitionist term. So if you want to talk about medicinal, say cannabis. If you want to talk about industrial, say hemp. And that's for everybody. A really simple way. Forget about marijuana. It doesn't exist anymore. We have the plant called cannabis sativa or cannabis indica or cannabis ruderalis, and they have their similarities and differences. But if you're talking about industrial that doesn't have any THC and can't get you stoned, you've got to smoke 4 kilos of the shit to do anything, call it hemp. If you're talking about medicinal or recreational, and there is a very grey area to say which is which, then call it cannabis. And that way it's correct, and it's sort of, in that way it's not confusing. And also you won't get ripped off by oil scammers saying they have CBD oil when it's actually hemp oil. Hemp oil comes from the seed. It's a complete, it contains omega-3s and omega-6s that keep your cell membranes healthy. So it's really, really good for you, but it does not contain CBD or THC, apart from very trace amounts. If you want CBD from industrial hemp, you have to harvest the flowers of the plant and get the CBD that way. And yes, industrial hemp does have higher levels of CBD than recreational cannabis, but they're completely different to hemp products. So what's legal in Australia now is hemp as food. So you can get hemp protein, hulled hemp, hemp seed oil, but you can't get CBD. In Queensland, I'm not sure about other states, it is S4. Again, one of these ones that a doctor can prescribe and they know shit all about, but a herbalist who knows about it can't prescribe it. So CBD is still in that thing in Queensland anyway. So now, completely forgot what your question was.
I was just wondering if that's what the question was referring to, whether your tolerance would take...
Oh, right. Yeah, so as you can see, there is no difference. Like medical, recreational, cannabis, all the same thing. Depends on what you're using it for, and that's where the individualisation comes in.
Yeah.
And all the rest that you use for everything else except medicine is hemp.
Yeah. I'm just saying take it.
Yep, and I think he's winding me up now. So thank you very much for your attention, and hopefully I'll see you next workshop. Oh God.
Right, okay.
So she's proof what good things come out of Queensland. What a gem.